So recently, I've stopped work after a kind of a long period in the same job. Thought of retiring, or the process of retiring. It's a relatively confronting process, and suddenly from having every day of your life work towards something, every day is the same, to suddenly not have that structure and things. It's quite a challenge. The biggest thing really is for young lawyers when they start to somehow make themselves indispensable, going that extra mile, just being helpful, being useful, managing projects and the processes and things that go with it, understanding how those things, being able to look at broadly than just the issue that's in front of you, and be able to sit down and help people make their own decisions. It becomes very important to, one, maintain your own integrity, and two, try and be, as upfront as you possibly can with your own client, to allow your client to remain in control of the decision making that is occurring.
Kia ora te whānau, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai or no mai hoki mai. Welcome back to the What a Lawyer podcast. This is a show where we interview accomplished lawyers across Aotearoa, looking to share their skills, stories, and legislative insights for our curious minds or emerging lawyers looking to learn from those that have been there and done that. I'm your host, Sam Lindsay, an agency director and search partner at Chisholm Clark, and I privately help lawyers navigate their careers both nationally and internationally. And through this podcast, bring you stories and conversations that you can learn from and apply today. Joining me today is Alasdair Christie, a recently retired property lawyer who spent an extraordinary 39 years with Sharp Tudhope lawyers in Tauranga. Admitted to the bar in 1983, Alasdair joined Sharp Tudhope in 1987, where he built a highly respected property law practice and became a trusted advisor to generations of clients. He was appointed partner in 1995, a position he held for 27 years, before transitioning into a consulting role in 2022. Throughout his career, Alasdair has been not only known for his technical expertise and steady guidance, but also his commitment to mentoring younger lawyers and contributing to the wider Tauranga community. As Sharp Tudhope's chair of partners reflected on his retirement, Alasdair's influence on both the firm and those around him will be felt for years to come. In a profession where career moves have been increasingly common, Alasdair's story offers a fascinating perspective on what it means to spend almost 4 decades with the same firm, witnessing enormous change within the legal profession while remaining grounded in the values of relationships, service, and integrity. Today, we'll explore the lessons he's learned over a lifetime in the law, the evolution of legal practice in regional New Zealand, the importance of mentorship, and what it takes to build a career that's not only successful, but truly meaningful. Please join me in welcoming Alasdair Christie.
Yeah, hi Sam. Great to see you on Zoom. I've got to say this is slightly unusual and not my normal mode of operation. And my 2 kids who live in London are both sort of pretty keen to see the result of this and hear what I've got to say. So I'll be tested.
Yeah, I'm sure. No doubt they'll give you plenty of flack for it too, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, having said that, my daughter, who is a lawyer as well, she's kind of one step ahead of me. She's already done one of these to do with a charity she was involved with a few years ago. So she's had some experience of it. So, but yeah, I'm sure they'll pull me up if I say the wrong thing.
I'm sure, no doubt. Well, hey, look, it's great to have you on the show. Do you want to start just by telling our listeners what's been going on in your world lately?
Okay, so recently. I've stopped work, and after a kind of a long period in the same job, and that took a little while to kind of get to that point. And it's kind of, I must say, it's kind of a the thought of retiring, or the process of retiring, is it's a relatively confronting process, and suddenly from having every day of your life work towards something, and work towards every morning you get up, put your clothes on, have your breakfast, go to work, every day is the same, to suddenly not have that structure and things. It's quite a challenge, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. A lot of people will say, you should have done it ages ago, and various things, and other people say, why are you stopping working? But it's interesting.
Yes, I can certainly imagine. I'm not at that point just yet, unfortunately, but I do look forward to the day when I can retire and perhaps play a little bit more golf. But what have you been keeping busy with?
It's only been a month. I had 10 days in Australia, which was great. We went and caught up with some of the WSL surfing at Snapper Rock. For anyone who knows anything about surfing, it was a big deal. It was a nuts, crazy thing. 25,000 people watching.
Wow.
Weather was warm and all things. And then and since I was back, we've had a day over at Raglan, the same series of competitions and bits and pieces. And so, but it was great to go and see it and kind of, see the real thing and see because I guess I watched quite a bit of it on the computer and stuff. So, so a bit of that, seeing my father-in-law who's still alive at the age of 99. So that's pretty interesting kind of dealing with, so he's about to be 100. So got a bit of a celebration coming up shortly. And then other than that, I've just been kind of really just around home doing a bit of gardening, a few jobs, a few other bits and pieces, trying to keep myself a little bit fit and a few things like that. So, yeah.
Nice.
Trying to work out what happens next.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Now, Alasdair, you and I didn't know each other until maybe a month and a half ago-ish. I came across your name on LinkedIn where your former firm, Sharp Tudhope, had put out an article about you spending 39 years with that firm and 27 of them as a partner. Now, that grabbed me straight away, and that was the reason that I got in touch, because I thought, man, there's got to be something here, and I'm sure you'll be able to spin a good yarn. So thank you so much for joining us today on the show. What we have in store for today is your career story. Essentially, I've got 7 points that we're going to break down into manageable sizes, just to really help us get all the detail from you at various stages of your career, in the hopes that one of our junior audience is going to learn something from you today. So today we're going to discuss your early career, landing your first job, and what your early practice looked like, promotions and performance throughout your career, any travel and overseas experience that you may or may not have had, or traveling with your family, practicing law and the juggling of life, your current situation and what's important to you, and what you're going to be doing next. I've also got our standard Ask Me Anything section in our podcast, and I've got some quick fire questions for you at the very end. May seem like a lot, but believe me, it'll fly. Did you, in order to go and land your first role, I think you said it was with Public Trust, did you feel like you were prepared enough? Did you know how to write a cover letter? Did you know how to prepare a CV? Did you know how to get that in front of the appropriate person and then interview? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think it was, like thinking back, I don't know that we ever had any experience about writing CVs or anything else. You tended to turn up to an interview and
just give it a crack.
And just, kind of give it a go. I mean, I guess there wasn't so much pressure, and it was this was actually in Rotorua, and I gotta say, I wouldn't have had a lot of competition in terms of the job and other bits and pieces. So, in terms of what they taught us at law school, two things. Firstly, I often felt afterwards that the degree itself could have been condensed into a shorter time period and still learn kind of what you need to learn in a legal sense, or in terms of how to navigate you around, and how the legal sort of part of the system and precedents and things like that works. But it's certainly at that stage there wasn't enough emphasis placed on the practicalities of actually, say, working in an office, working with people, all of those kind of things. And I always felt that they could have condensed the degree part of it, but then had you go out and work, say, for the next year or 2 years or whatever, to finish things off. And as part of that, you do a little bit of hands-on and a little bit of theoretical as well, because I think you come out a more well-rounded person. Because when you come out of university, you really, yes, you learn a whole lot of facts and cases and various other things, and learn the things. But in terms of the practicalities of the day-to-day business of law, you haven't really learned anything. And certainly when you first start, you do feel not out of your depth exactly, but I certainly never felt, particularly confident that, that I could sit in front of a client and tell them what their rights were or what they should do, or, that comes with an awful lot of practice and experience and other things.
Yeah.
And
cool. Yeah, nice. So moving forward then, and where you've spent the vast majority of your career was at Sharp Tudhope,
Yep.
what I'd be really keen to understand now is um, what your growth. So first of all, we could start with your practice area and then your growth as a lawyer inside this firm and inside this role over that duration of time. What did growth look like? What did performance look like? You were obviously promoted all the way through. So what did that all look like? And then I've got another couple of juicy questions for you once you get through that.
So that's fine. Look, I'll actually go, if I can, I'll just go back one slight step. So when I moved to Whakatane, which was a job in a small practice there, in a small area, you do everything. So you do whatever kind of comes across, including at that stage, going to court. So I have had a few court experiences, although not for a long time.
Yeah.
And I still remember my first court appearance. I have no idea what I was doing. You go down to represent some poor person, and you got a really grumpy district court judge who's not going to give you the time of day and things. So that was I'm going to say was a pretty frightening kind of experience, really, because you're responsible for what happens to somebody, and I think in a way not enough emphasis placed on really understanding how the system works, because an awful lot of what we do in practice is around how the system works.
Yeah.
So even though I quite enjoy standing up and talking to people, and I quite on things, and I quite enjoy teaching young lawyers how to do things, and I enjoy so I'm quite happy to do that. I was never, I was a much more of a pragmatic person. I'm not particularly litigious. I'm not particularly combative. So some of that area of litigation and things really didn't kind of suit me, or wasn't that kind of particularly interested in.
Yeah.
So much
It's
more
not for
interested
everyone.
in sort of
Yeah.
just much more interested in helping people sort of get through whatever it is that they've got in front of them at the time, and try to work out a way of doing it. So when I went to Sharp Tudhope, I went really to help somebody out who had a big practice in local government. We used to work for the council, and so I had a lot of work for things like the local council, the power board, and related entities and other bits and pieces. So I had a lot, as well as property related things. You also had a lot to do with a lot of the legislation things that are related around it. So, so what I found is, I'm sort of skipping ahead a little bit at the moment, but what I've found, and I guess out of all of that, and if anyone ever asks me, so how do you get progression in a firm? And I've had this discussion with a few young people at work. In fact, not long before I finished work, a young woman who just started with us, she said, "Oh, can I, you like going to have a coffee every day? How about can I come and talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." So she really wanted to quiz me about the same things that we're talking about here: is how did you kind of, get ahead, and how did you do those things? Which is the first time in my whole career that anyone's actually ever fronted the conversation and started the conversation. So, but the thing that I would say to people is from my experience and from having been in this firm, in the same firm for 39 years, the biggest thing really is for young lawyers when they start to somehow make themselves indispensable. And by that, what I mean is treat the partner or the senior, whoever it is that you're reporting to, treat them as your client. Always be ahead of time. Always come in and basically try and take the work that you can off that person's desk. Just make yourself super useful.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, what happens is that, for example, if somebody says to you, "Oh, I need this job by Friday," and you say, and you turn up on Friday with the job, the person who's then got to review it and maybe do something with it doesn't have time to actually review it properly, because they're probably on some other deadline. So when somebody tells you that they want it by Friday, they generally mean, "I want it tomorrow," so that we've got time to deal with it. And if you can do that, what it does is it also overcomes, if you've got some errors, or some things that haven't been explored, or whatever it might happen to be. It just gives you that opportunity to cover those things. And if you just going that extra mile, just being helpful, being useful, being being good to deal with, that's how I've sort of, I guess I've built and run my career really.
At Chisholm Clark, I spend a lot of time talking with lawyers about their careers. Sometimes they're unhappy, sometimes they're just curious, sometimes they're well and truly looking for a change. If you genuinely love your role and you have a great mixture of work type, people, balance, culture, then that's fantastic. You probably don't need us. But if you've been wondering whether this country, this firm, this role, even this area of law is the right fit for you, then that's where we can help. Chisholm Clark is a legal search firm built here in New Zealand specifically for lawyers. We take a private, thoughtful approach, getting to know you both as a person and as a professional, so that we can connect you with the right opportunities that genuinely fit, including those on the open market and off market, not just what you hear about or see on the shelf. Whether you're actively looking or just exploring, we offer a confidential, no pressure way to understand your options, from roles and salaries and insights and people and genuine career direction. Because a legal career should feel sustainable and not overwhelming, sometimes the best next step is just finding the right fit and starting up. If you're ready for a chat or just want to know what's out there, head along to chisholmclark.co.nz and reach out today for a private discussion on your terms. And now, back to the conversation.
And so that obviously gained you access to multiple promotions throughout your career. Do you mind telling us sort of how long you spent in each role, and did that look like a standard hierarchy at Sharp Tudhope? And then obviously, ultimate culminating in partner.
Yeah. So when I started, and we're talking 40 years ago, an awful lot has changed during that time in terms of how things are kind of run and how things are reviewed. Everything was very much, even though it was a partnership, it was very much a group of individual practitioners who happen to be in the same kind of building together, doing their own thing. So we didn't have so many levels, formal levels as there are in law firms now. It seems to be much more of a thing in a law firm now to have, solicitors, junior solicitors, and a real hierarchy. It was much less when I was there. And if essentially, if you could make a big enough name for yourself, if you had enough clients and enough leverage to bring to the table, you could become a partner. And there were various types of partnerships and various types of the way those partnerships worked. When I first went in, it was very much the place that people would buy into a practice, and then that went by the wayside. So we didn't have so much junior, senior solicitors and senior associates and various other bits and pieces. We had associates, but very quickly, people became partners probably almost earlier than they do now. So it took me a little while to become a partner, and I was probably, fortunate that the partner who I worked for would have pushed my barrow, for me, and rather than me, kind of pushing it, myself. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that, while I was a partner, I had a couple of ups and downs. Things didn't quite go, quite so well, but I did manage through my work to meet enough people, do enough good work for enough people that gave me the leverage. And in the end, that's actually what's important for a partnership, is to have people who are not everybody there long enough, but people there long enough who build up a big enough practice that they can sustain things going into the future.
So we've had 27 years then in the partnership, and looking at moving on, obviously recently, what's going on with you now? What are you doing with your time? What are you excited about? What are you challenged by?
So I made a decision a few years ago that I would start this process. And then I got to the point where, from past experience, I felt that it wasn't fair on a lot of people, including their clients and also on the staff back at work, to have your time reduced down too much below, certainly below 3 days a week. So I've been doing 3 days a week for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And in part of that time, I went and did a secondment with a client to help them out. But so I kind of made the decision to slow down. So then it got to the point where, I was either in or out. So I decided that, I would just exit. So my slowdown and exit has taken, it's taken a bit longer than probably was the original plan, but it ended up being in quite a good place where I was reasonably comfortable that, the clients that I had looked after for a long time were being well looked after by somebody else, or alternatively, they'd made their own decision to kind of go this because I'm not going to be there forever, So that actually worked out, kind of pretty well. So in terms of what comes next, at the moment, I've just really got next couple of months just doing day-to-day things, just pottering around, and then I'm heading south for a few weeks, and doing what I've always said that we should be able to do, which is to head off and do those sorts of things, and not be under any commitment to come back. It's a weird concept, but, because normally, you got to be back at work next week or something. So everything you do is very much, I'm on the plane today, I've got to be back on the plane next Sunday or whenever it might happen to be. And you really run by that work. Having said that, that's what our lives are, revolve around. But for the first time ever, even though I've got a booking on the ferry coming back, I can change it.
That's as far as it
if I
goes.
said, well, actually, I'm getting used to this now. I'm going to take a little bit more time pottering around, South Island and stuff, doing a few things. So, and then after that, I plan to kind of try and sit down and make some rational decision about doing some things for the next 5 years or so. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of travel in there, but I don't see it as being kind of huge apart from the cost and everything. I'm not wanting to go traveling just for the sake of it. We've got a couple of projects here, which we're looking to get off the ground. One to do with predator free at the Mount Maunganui, and allied with that, which is giving nature a chance to kind of come back a little bit, and in particularly relevant in terms of the kind of the disaster that we've had with the Mount, which happened earlier in the year, when those when there's huge number of slips, and unfortunately sadly people were killed. But so it's allied to that, but it's not on the Mount itself. So I've got that.
Cool. So from super structured in the law firm environment to very casually enjoying the freedom of retirement. Sounds like a nice little life there. Well, good on you. We're moving now into our Ask Me Anything section of the podcast. I've got a few questions for you, Alasdair, and just looking for your first genuine answer. So first question is, looking back, what are you most proud of professionally?
39 years in the same job, in a way, because even though it's the same firm, people have come and gone during that time. So you're not always, dealing. It's not like you're dealing with, and clients. In saying that, that also, means that I've managed to look after, some clients for pretty much that whole time, and being able to be, they see me as I suppose, a confidant, and somebody who's prepared to sit down and listen to people, try and work out what the solution is, not be too heavy-handed in terms of saying, well, a legal position is this and that, So a lot of what we do, and in a law firm, is project management. In other words, it's managing projects and the processes and things that go with it, understanding how those things, being able to look at, more broadly than just the issue that's in front of you, and be able to sit down and help people make their own decisions.
Yeah, nice. If you were starting a legal career now in 2026, is there anything you would do differently?
I think if I did anything, it would be, it would be to, have made myself, follow the advice that I give this, that I give to other people, which is to make yourself a bit more indispensable at an earlier, kind of an earlier age, and possibly take a few more opportunities that were there that, I let slide because of my nature and things. So.
Yep, fair enough. Can you recall a particularly challenging period in your career and what you learned from it?
Small examples of things that I learned. Certainly one of the things that I learned, which is, again, which would be, for any young lawyer listening, one, we don't know the answers to everything. Some lawyers think they do, and far be it for me to criticise them, but it's not the right way. We don't know everything. We all make mistakes. Things happen. And the earlier and more, the better you are at fronting up to those things in some way, shape or form, the better off you'll be. Don't try and solve everything. If you've caused a, problem, for example, and often comes up with things like conflicts of interest, which I'm always, pretty wary of, especially more latterly, where if you try and keep things to yourself, try and solve things for yourself, there's old adage like, a problem shared is a problem solved or half solved, actually rings true. And so the more you can, do some of those things, the kind of better.
So last one here, and this probably feeds into this question actually, is what qualities do you think will remain essential for lawyers, regardless of how much technology changes the profession?
As a lawyer, even in a relatively straightforward conveyancing, there are always four people in the room. There's you, your client, and there's then there's the other party and their lawyer. So it's always a difficult process. If there's some issue arises, it's never going to be straightforward and simple, to solve these things, because there are so many parties, and sometimes you've got to go through their lawyers and other bits and pieces. So it becomes very important to, one, maintain your own integrity, and two, try and be, as upfront as you possibly can with your own client, to allow your client to remain in control of the decision making that is occurring, and because it's the client who makes the decisions about these things, not you. So, so there's that. Plus, also, I guess the qualities. The biggest thing is the ability to get on with your client and having a reasonably good relationship. Because if you do have a good relationship, you don't have to be the best lawyer in the world, but you do need to be, especially in general practice, you need to be somebody who can get on with people, be reasonably alive to the issues, be reasonably, prepared to front your client and say, well, we can't do this or we can't do that. If that is the thing, help people through things. And it's that ability to be able to deal with people, which, that is always has been important. And especially now where the law is becoming much more contestable, that ability to get on with people has become critical. And I think, and I said actually this when we had a wee farewell for me at work, and had a bunch of clients and the staff all turned up and spoke. And I actually said to everybody, I said, my sense of, who knows where AI is going to head, and depending on who you listen to, it's we're headed to doomsday or somewhere. But even with AI, those connections for lawyers are going to be, I believe, more important than ever, because otherwise you're just another click at the end of a click of a button.
Another 6-minute increment, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Last section for you now is our standard quick fire. So we ask the same 3 questions to every guest that we have on the show in the career story category. First question here for you is, why did you choose to specialise in your area of law?
Partly, so I'm going to say partly by a process of elimination, in the sense that the subjects that I did, I guess, helped lead me into the law. I was never going to be a court lawyer. And so, but and for me, I've always enjoyed building things. I've always enjoyed doing puzzles. I've always enjoyed looking at plans and other things like that. So a lot of what I've done around dealing with, property transactions, subdivisions, Public Works Act, I had a big involvement with the Public Works Act, all of those things. They all have elements of sort of practicality and pragmatism, which I've really kind of, enjoyed. Plus also parts of it where you get involved with people's trust and do their personal work, you end up doing a whole range of things within
Everything
that.
else.
That's right. That also, that, that ability to be able to relate to people and get on with people and gain their confidence. Is crucial, without which, you really have nothing left. There's nothing much left.
Yep. What I know we touched on this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but what is something that you wish law school had better prepared you for?
In terms of that, I go back to part of what I said is I actually think, and I even think I thought this at the time, that they could change the structure of how law schools actually put people out into the workplace, and I think I believe they could shorten the degree. You could then have a program of 1 to 2 years of trying to think what the word is, but the way they used to do it, which is you'd be virtually sitting in a partner's or a lawyer's office and learning an awful lot of stuff by osmosis about how the world operates, how things work. So there's that. I think that probably thinking back, a little bit of more structure around things work economically and financially would be very useful for anyone entering private practice, because a lot of what you do is for people who are doing deals, buying businesses, spending money. So all of those kind of skills that go with it would be extremely useful as well.
Mm-hmm. And what is a single piece of advice that you would give a young Alasdair?
I should have thought about this. I should have thought you'd asked me this question.
Yeah.
I think you've got to get out of your comfort zone and make yourself available to people and accessible to people, and do that in your own way. Don't do that in a way that's kind of inherent, that's fake or anything, because you can't. You are, and you're never going to be any different. But you do have to do those if you want to have ultimately you want to have a career in the law.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you very much, Alasdair. That was some enlightening answers and a fantastic conversation. So thank you so much. That is all we do have time for today in the What a Lawyer podcast. So thank you very much to our audience for joining us on this conversation, our media team and sponsors, and a quick request to please follow our show on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube to really help us spread the word. Thank you to our amazing guest, Alasdair Christie, for your time and generosity, sharing your expertise and your career story with us. Thank you so much. I'm sure there's going to be some great listeners out there who are very appreciative as well. Once again, what a lawyer. That was Alasdair Christie.